Hi, I'm Madison Miller, and I'm going to talk about the self-care wellness practice that I did for this course. I did like once a week at least HIIT weight training, which is high intensity weight training. It's basically when I go to the gym with like a trainer and other students, and I lift weights with a lower amount of repetitions but a higher amount of weight to like increase my muscle mass. It's different from volume weight training, which is basically like what most people do at the gym. Which is just like doing as many reps as you can. So when I try to explain to people that don't really understand like HIIT weight training versus volume weight training, I use like a track and field metaphor where HIIT weight training would be like the 100-meter dash and volume training would be like running the mile. Just explaining that volume weight training and running the mile would be more endurance, and then HIIT weight training and like the 100-meter dash would be just like a really strong like sprint of energy. So I conducted research through looking at scientific literature and popular literature, as we all did. And one of the first things I found is that HIIT weight training promotes fat mass loss, but muscle mass gain. And when you do the heavier reps, with the lower amount of reps, it's like consistently working the fast twitch muscles, like the muscle fibers in your arms and your legs and your back and your neck and blah, blah, through each exercise you do, which is like, one, you're working out so you're going to lose fat, but it's also building the muscle mass and like making it bigger as you're doing the workout. So in my second research opportunity, I found once again that HIIT weight training will increase your muscle mass index, but it also helps build better interleukin-1 receptor antagonists. It decreases your fasting glucose and helps with your insulin levels. So when talking about your interleukin-1 receptor antagonists, as we like sort of described in anatomy, it's gonna like help with your immune system and like creating like an earlier response, as well as release anti-inflammatory mediators for like when there's an infection or foreign pathogens and such. But HIIT weight training will also decrease your fasting glucose and insulin, which is important to stop the early onset of type 2 diabetes. And then the increase in insulin levels would also do that. And then in my third article from scientific literature, I found that there was an article that basically compared over a 6-month period a set of people that did HIIT weight training, a set of people that did volume, which is like moderate intensity weight training that we talked about earlier. And the people that did volume training ended up decreasing the amount of like weight that they could carry, like they're decreasing their strength in their legs and their triceps, but then people that did HIIT weight training were overall still able to carry more weight than the people that did volume training. So they increased in all aspects of like the body and what they could carry. When I looked into popular literature, I found research that basically explained that HIIT weight training can improve your cardiac health by increasing your stroke volume when you're working out, which is really beneficial because how are you supposed to live the rest of your life if your heart's not working correctly? So basically, it found that HIIT training was a good way to incorporate cardiac health into one's daily life. In my second website from popular literature, I found that HIIT training increases the amount of calories you burn. It helps with your metabolism, the loss of fat, the gain of muscle, the increase in oxygen consumption, the decrease in your heart rate, the decrease in your blood pressure, and the decrease in your blood sugar. So overall, when you mix like the loss of fat and calories burned, it's just overall decreasing like the amount of fat in your body, as well as incorporating the ability for your body to metabolize better. It also helps with cardiac health, like mentioned earlier, because it decreases your heart rate and decreases your blood pressure. And it can help with your fitness again because it decreases your blood sugar, like we talked about earlier with the early onset of type 2 diabetes. And in my third evidence in popular literature, there was another study that talked about comparing volume trainers and HIIT weight trainers again, and just describing like their outcomes after a certain period of time and which one was overall more beneficial. So basically, we once again had HIIT trainers doing like one workout, like the HIIT training workout, and then volume trainers doing the moderate intensity workout. And at the end of like the 6-month period or so, we found that HIIT weight trainers, gained more muscle mass and more muscle than the people that did volume weight training, which helped people conclude the idea that when they're doing HIIT weight training, they're spending less time in the gym but doing higher reps, and they're getting a better outcome than people doing volume training. So at the end of the day, you technically don't need to spend as much time in the gym like what you would do in volume training, which would be like 1 to 2 hours or so. But you can spend less time in the gym, but you would just have to do HIIT training in order to get that result that you want. In an overall picture, I found that scientific literature was found more reliable and had a stronger strength of evidence than popular literature did, because all the popular literature websites I found were biased and by like Men's Health and workout websites and such in general. So it just kind of concluded that there was like a bias to it because they were like wanting to promote like the workout. And all the websites had ads, which we talked about in one of the previous modules, that wasn't really a reliable thing, as well as they didn't have any like citations from scientific literature either, and the authors weren't necessarily experts in their field. They were just people writing like a blog about HIIT weight training, what they found was great about it. On the other hand, my scientific literature websites were found to have either very good or good strengths of evidence. This is because the authors weren't biased. They had authors who were qualified in the area in the health field and had PhDs and were just overall educated on like the body and muscle mass and how the body works and like the oxygen consumption, how that affects the body and such. And I thought that was really important because it allowed them to not have a bias, and it made the overall article really qualified. I also found that there weren't any ads because it was again on a database and it was scientific literature, so that made it even more reliable. And overall, they just had citations that were from like other pieces of literature from other credited authors that made it credible at the same time, basically proving that the scientific literature, in my opinion, was more credible and had a greater strength of evidence than the popular literature did. So in summary, I wanted to talk about basically what I learned in my experience and comparing it to popular literature and scientific literature. So at the beginning, I basically thought that I was walking into like people throwing like giant weights around and like grunting and like throwing their back out, and it's just gonna be a complete hot mess. And especially because my parents own a gym, like I understand form, and I thought people were just going to be throwing things everywhere, just trying to get like the highest weight possible, and people were going to be getting hurt. But I actually found it was the opposite. They were actually like super qualified and were there to help me with my form at the same time. And it benefited me and my confidence and weight loss and such. And the scientific literature also proved that it would burn more calories, increase metabolism, reduce heart rate, and you would spend less time in the gym, which I thought was like really crazy to me because I didn't like expect like if you were to do these higher weights but lower reps that you would even still get better results than people that just did regular volume weight training. And I thought that was really interesting. But overall, I don't want to convince people not to do volume training versus HIIT weight training. I know that HIIT weight training is good, and I just found that out. But I think that as long as you're not necessarily going to the gym but staying active, it's really important for your mental health and your physical health. And you guys should continue to do some of the training and some of the things you learned because it's important to stay healthy mentally and physically. So thank you.